Okay, I don't really know why I did this. I mean, I was at the screening and they gave me this glow stick, which I think you can see the logo on. And like, I love it, but I don't really know what I'm going to do with my glow stick. Though this actually got really bright. What if I just the whole movie review like this? Very atmospheric, very like mysterious. A Quiet Place Part 2. This is great. No, I'm not going to do this. Don't worry. It is like terrifyingly bright. Love that. You can probably see the logo better now. Anyway, A Quiet Place Part 2 is the sequel to the original 2018 A Quiet Place, which is a movie I like. I'm not necessarily like a huge fan of it. I think John Krasinski shows a lot of great directorial ability there. Obviously a very original concept. Also, by the way, I am hopefully getting a haircut soon, so you won't have to deal with like this soon because it's fucking atrocious right now. Anyway, so to say basically though, after a year of delay, I was hyped for this film. I don't love the original, but still I was hyped for the sequel. And I think it's a very interesting film for both really good and really bad reasons. I'll just say straight up, I don't like this movie. But I think why is really interesting. Or more specifically, what makes this a bad film. But first, let's start with what makes this a good film. I think number one, the continued exploration of this world is really, really lovely. In a world where so many superhero movies, or not superhero movies, but so many horror films and films in general are so loud, playing around with quietness. And in this film especially, they play around with silence and switching between perspectives of a silent world and a world of noise is really, really interesting. Granted, A Quiet Place Part 2 clearly is much louder than the first film. I still think those explorations work really, really well. And the other huge positive has to be the acting. I know a lot of people loved Emily Blunt in the original. A lot of people really tried to make an award season happen for her in that film. It didn't come true. But both in practical, as far as the scenes they are given, and thematically, Emily Blunt really takes a step back here. And her children are the ones who step forward. We've seen Noah Jupe with Honey Boy. Here, he's kind of the heart and soul of the film, and he is incredible. I mean, the sheer amount of emotional intelligence he has as a young actor is almost scary. Like, I really was impressed, obviously, with Jacob Tremblay in Room, but even compared to, like, Tremblay, I think Noah Jupe shows so much potential in drama and in horror, and here he is wonderful. Whenever he has to either step up and show bravery, or whenever he has to show that he's afraid or panicked or overwhelmed, you really, really feel it. With the only individual in the cast showing him up a little bit when it comes to acting being Millicent Simmons. She was one of the highlights of the original film, and in this movie she really kind of steps up to be the lead actress. For the first time, you see a lot of these characters really begin to split off on their own. I know we got a little bit of that towards the end of the last movie, but in this one, I mean, she is the lead actress of this film, and I think she does a pretty damn good job. Both her and Jupe I found just to be wildly impressive. I think these are two of the best performances so far of the year, and I think the talents that both of them show being so young, like I said, is almost frighteningly like good. I think it's wildly impressive, and you really don't miss Emily Blunt. Like, obviously she's in the movie, obviously she's really good in the film still, but really it is these two individuals that step up. They are the core of the soul of the identity of A Quiet Place Part 2. And I think it's very smart that they did that. It allows for expansion and it allows for evolution of the franchise without completely abandoning Emily Blunt or what came beforehand. But sadly, this is where we start to get into the negatives, where the performances are incredible. Their characters that they get to play are god awful. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh here. I mean, it is a horror cliche that characters do the stupidest things imaginable. But in an effort to move the plot along, how A Quiet Place 2 treats its characters and treats their actions, it's almost embarrassingly bad. Truly, there were moments where I was just jaw dropped and even laughed at the movie, considering characters just continually did the stupidest things. This is a film that likes to have a lot of points of tension happening at the same time, and where the editing between all these different characters and all their little moments of peril, really, the editing is quite effective to get there. They just have to make characters do random things that make no sense. Again, I'm not going to get into spoilers here, but there's a scene like where Noah Jupe is in a like bunker, and he's alone basically, and he is waiting for his sister and his mom to get back from doing whatever they're doing. He's waiting, he's there alone, he is safe. He randomly, in this time where he is afraid, they've shown he's afraid, he he shouldn't be going out. He just randomly leaves. Just randomly. It achieves absolutely nothing, and it makes no sense. But he just leaves in order for him to get into a perilous situation so you can have those moments of tension all coincide. It's really, really annoying, and it doesn't help that the plot itself is just not that good. The first plot was rather simple. Emily Blunt is having a baby. This family, it's just a bad night on the farm. Everything kind of happens at once, but it makes logical sense. This is such a convoluted plot that makes little no sense. There is, character motivations that they try to explain, but in order to get the plot to move along, they have to build this plot that doesn't make a lot of sense to begin with, but even the bits that they do really explain it kind of make sense. It's built on a house of cards that just seem completely illogical. This movie doesn't happen with rational people. This movie doesn't happen with people, or even these characters and who they're established to be, acting how they have established that these characters should act. It just really borders on incompetence plot-wise, which I really hate to say, but it's bad. It is bad to watch. It is almost, like I said, embarrassingly bad. I think this really suffered from the fact that they didn't know what they were wanting to do with the sequel. They had the idea that they wanted to leave the farm, they wanted to go explore the world, but they just didn't have a catalyst to do that. And clearly it seems like John Krasinski, he understands the character. He understands, how to write a character. He understands how to write the emotional scenes. He knows how to get the big moments correct. But even in the first one, there are so many plot holes. And it's clear that he just doesn't always know how to get to those moments. And in A Quiet Place, because the gimmick was so fresh and so inventive and so interesting, you were able to look past that. In A Quiet Place 2, the gimmick isn't quite that, impressive anymore. It no longer, is able to mystify the audience to the point where they're able to look past it. At least I wasn't. So what you're left with is a very, very poorly built plot of just a bad plot, I would actually say. And there are things here that are redeemable. Like I said, the acting is great. I appreciate the cinematography. I appreciate the sound design. I think the visual effects definitely, it's kind of weird. Half the visual effects are incredible, and then half of them are just like bad. But I think just ultimately this movie doesn't make sense, which is its biggest downfall. Like even in the fundamentals of how this movie works, obviously for points of tension, there'll be characters walking through a building, let's say, being very quiet while a monster is in another room. And just randomly the monster will like burst through a wall for a jump scare. All the jump scares here, you can really, this movie is really solid when it comes to tension. When it comes to jump scares, number one, you can telegraph whenever a jump scare is coming. But also, like, the CGI looks bad, and it doesn't even make a lot of sense. Like, we've established that these characters, when there's water around, it's hard for them to focus on someone. And there's literally a scene here where the character's head is in basically like a waterfall of water. There's water gushing from a ceiling, and it's hitting the character in the head, or the monster in the head. And just, it has no effect on the monster. And it's like, well, we've established that it should have an effect. They literally 5 minutes beforehand used this and showed like, oh, the character doesn't know where, or the monsters doesn't know where the characters are. And it just ignores it. And it's just, I don't know. I think this screenplay, A Quiet Place had issues. You were able to overlook it. This film doubles down on those issues and hopes and prays the audience will be able to overlook it. And I just couldn't. And it just created a really frustrating experience. I mean, I don't think this film is a disaster. It's not my, worst film of the year or anything. I just don't think it's that good. I think it's really disappointing as a sequel, and I just really hoped for a lot better here. So that was kind of my quick ramble thoughts on A Quiet Place Part 2. I've kind of decided that this channel, as far as my reviews, for the bigger movies, once I go to either the opening night showing or if I go to a screening, I'm going to come on here and kind of give a more rambly review. If you want my more, well thought out, more crafted opinion, down in the description below once it is posted. I do a full review for A Quiet Place coming out this time on Filmotomy. It is a full written review, so if you want like the nicer version of this, feel free to check it out. It will be posted in the description below once that review is out. I do have a couple more announcements as far as things coming out on the channel. I've kind of decided on a couple things I want to try out, but for now, those are going to remain a mystery, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching.